everybody, and thanks for stopping by. This is the first in a series of videos related to building Eddie Van Halen related guitars. Now, this first series is Franky with a Tom Anderson neck on it, and if you can deal with the less than professional audio, I think you'll still get a lot of good info on this guitar, on its creation, its history, and we'll go through some of the myths and speculation and everything else that is Eddie Van Halen guitars. And if you have a guitar that you want to see built, hit me up. Contact me below, leave a message, do something, and I'll get it on the list. The next series after this one is a full 5150 full relic that turned out excellent. But for right now, enjoy this series on Franky, and you'll see what it takes to build one accurately and to pull it off the best that we can. Thank you for stopping. Alright, the Epoxy has dried, and we've got that nice first layer on. It's been real humid today. I'm just outside of New Orleans. It took a little longer than usual for this to set up and harden. I'm not really feeling any of those fibers sticking up. Alright, at this point, what you want to do, take that fresh razor that you've got, and you want to go over very flat and smooth, almost as though you're going to rub it on your own skin. You want it real light. But if you feel a couple high points, just work on it, and you get some off. It's not about the speed, it's about the pressure. The general rule when you go to start doing the epoxy is to wipe it across the grain. Some will say a 45-degree angle. Well, your grain is all over the place, so the general rule, go across it. That will push it down in. Then your last pass, go with the grain. The idea is to whatever card you're using, to have it straddle the high points, which is the white or lighter parts. If you can straddle that and level it, it will leave the lowest part, the valley, filled, in theory. So same with removing it. Try to go with the grain. And you'll find some spots that you put on heavier. And you really don't need years of experience to get to develop that kind of hand and all that. It's really not all that. You just got to be aware, I don't want to take it down to white wood. Remind yourself of that, and you'll be fine. So I'm going to work on this a little more, and then we're going to apply the second coat, which might be the final coat for the back. I think the front needs one more, but you see the tiny little bumps in the low parts because the razor never got down far enough to knock off the tips. So that tells me we need one more. I'm sorry, my wonderful Great Pyrenees, who is the size of a polar bear, is barking about 100 yards from me, and you could probably hear it. He has to get out and wake the neighborhood up every time he comes out and start the barking chain. That seems to be his job in life. But he's a sweet boy. Alright, I've done a good 10 minutes of flattening. I don't know if you can see it. The shiny parts are the valleys that still need to be filled. Remember with Franky though, you don't want glass smooth. Some grain does show through. So we're going to mix up some more epoxy. Same as before. We're going to try and get it into these darker grained areas. Do a final pass to get it smooth. So you can see I got down to the white in a couple places. Luckily there isn't much that shows in here, so I'm not going to worry about it. But you can still see there's still some shine there. Anyway, it's those valleys. And that tummy tuck always has them. So another thing, I've got a card here that it feels smooth, but it's kind of been sitting around for a while and probably has little nicks. So I take a sanding block and I just want to make sure it's smooth. And I'll do it at a 45, 45, then one more time for flat. And that's just to make sure it's flat. So mix until you get a lot of bubbles. Make sure if you use Epoxy that you get the finishing resin. It's the one with the longest amount of work time. And that window is what you want. They sell 5-minute epoxy, which gives you about a minute of work time. And they sell some different ones, but the longer the setup time, the stronger of an epoxy it is. So this is pretty much the strongest one they make. When this is all done and we've got this all flattened and just where we want it, we are going to take some sandpaper to it. Because the problem with epoxy is it does harden and dry glass smooth. And that gives nowhere for the paint to grab onto. So we'll eventually take some 400 to this. And we're going to cross the sanding grain, and if you looked at it really close under a microscope, it would look like little diamonds. Not perfect, but you get the idea that we want to rough it up. And that will give the paint more than enough area to cling on to. Almost like Velcro. So, alright, I'm seeing the bubbles pretty much gone here. Alright. So let's start. The other reason I take the time to do this with the little drops is it reminds me exactly where I need to go. Now you have a lot of clear detail in here on Franky due to the buckle rash, and it's very, very specific. It's one of the first things I look for when I look at somebody's replication or their version of Franky. And you can tell immediately how much time they spent on it or how accurate they were trying to go. So I make this area as flat as humanly possible. Because we got a cool technique, I got to tell you, to get in there and replicate exactly the rash that's on Franky. And you know, I do this for my own personal fun. I don't make money off of these. I don't do any of that. And in fact, if you want to become a patron, the link is below, right below the video. Become a monthly donor, even if it's $10. It's going to keep this channel going, supply the wood that I need, and everything else to keep making all these different replications, and each one is unique. You know, the Hot for Teacher is very different than the Kramer ad, Franky, and so on. I mean, obviously, one's a single humbucker and one's a Strat, but you get what I'm saying. And when it comes time that we are done with this and we start to tape off the bare wood areas, you're going to need the silhouette files that I use to cut the vinyl. You'd be surprised how many people own silhouettes. And I'm sure if you just asked around, you'd easily find somebody willing to cut whatever you needed. Those silhouettes usually sit around and do not get used all that much. And for patrons, for sponsors, supporters, I supply my original DXF files for the Silhouette. Cricket works as well. And I tell you which vinyl I actually have the best luck with. A lot of the cheaper ones, or even some of the name brands, end up leaving gunk, some of the adhesive behind as you peel it off. I don't know if my suspicion is that the paint that you're spraying actually has an effect on it. So I make it very clear which one to use. I think I'm going to work with some builders who do bodies and necks to give discounts to patrons of mine. And if you just enjoy the fact that there's a Eddie-centric channel out there that's going over all this stuff, the patron accounts, they really help me keep going. I don't get sponsored by anybody. I mean, necks are what, $200 a piece? Bodies about $170. And we haven't even talked about hardware, electronics, paint, sealers, epoxy, all the fun things you need to have on hand to get this stuff done. And I am not a wealthy guy, so if you want to help, I would certainly appreciate it. Alright, so what I think I've got now is a fairly smooth final pass. Start at one end, go all the way to the other. If you have screw-ups, it helps hide them. We're going to knock all that down. Pretty sure we're good here. Lines are always left behind by whatever you use. You'll never get that perfect. I would not recommend buying the expensive Stu Mac version of a squeegee either. They work well the first time, and they never really work that great again. So just save all of your gift cards and old credit cards, and this is old, by the way, and expired, but use what you got. And now we're going to roll the edges in case there's any bumps or high ridges left, which there usually is around these outside roundovers here. Not bad though. The end here I know has some because I saw it. Try to pull down any of those ridges. All right. I think we got. So we're going to just work on a couple spots where we know are trouble areas. And everybody is different. This body has pretty good roundovers. So we're just filling in that grain. These inside ears always require extra attention. And if you go a little heavy on the inside here, that's fine. And the reason for that is that it's easier to take it away than to come back and have to build it all up again. So if you can go heavy, if the epoxy has gotten nice and thick, go ahead and just slop it on there. Giggity. These bodies aren't the lightest either, I'm going to tell you. And there's no comment on the person who made it. The wood is what the wood is. You'll be really thankful when you're done and you're painting that you took this amount of time to get this just right. Prep, prep, prep. If you look on Eddie's, you see a lot of grain through here on his. Very visible. So, I'm not too concerned about making it glass smooth, but I do want to have it with the appearance of somewhat of a professional finish. I don't know if you ever saw the guitar that David Crosby gave to Jerry Garcia. It turned out to be his alligator guitar. But it was one of the first years that Fender made a plain sealed northern ash body. And I know exactly why they did, because it looks awesome. I mean, it looks really good. Anyway, I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Looks nice, looks smooth. I can't wait till this completely sets up, and then we can take the razor to it and get it down to that 90-95% flat that we need, because then more fun stuff happens after that. I'll make sure there isn't all that much in there. Oh, and if anybody's wondering why there are 6 holes here for the neck plate and not 4, Eddie Van Halen, as you probably know, jumped around a lot on stage, and he would easily knock out his neck out of alignment all the time. So what they did was, now I'm going to have to countersink a wide, probably a 1/2-inch hole or so, about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch deep, and there'll be 2 of them. And once you get these 4 bolts on for the neck, there's 2 more additional bolts. So you'll have 2 countersunken holes. And what he did was they'd put the neck on, mount it so it was straight, and then they'd put these 2 screws on. Then they would come and put the neck plate on it, over it, and do all 4 holes. And I imagine there was a serious problem with that, because as soon as you tighten down these 4, now there's more room to tighten these two hidden bolts or screws. So it was an idea, like Eddie has a million of them, but this one just quite didn't work. But I do use it, but I got to show you a tool that I made to make it work. And now what the heck, I'll do it right now. Hold on. Alright, so what I did was I bought some the cheap Chinese Fender. I mean, it could be any brand, but these neck plates, I drilled the holes in them. The size of these holes is about the width of that hole that you do for each. So you have plenty of room. So once I countersink, bore these out about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch, and I'm ready to apply the neck. I'll use this neck plate. Plunk it on there, get everything lined up just like you would any guitar setup, and get all 6 bolts tightened to where you're happy, to where they're basically as tight as you could possibly be. Now what I do is quickly take off these 4 outer bolts, put on the real neck plate, and put those 4 back in. And I try and do it fast because I don't want all that tension that's added to these 2 center bolts to have any effect. And once that's on there, it might as well be one solid piece of wood. It is as tight as could be.